Hello and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've all been well and have been having a good day so far. I'm Himadri Verma, and I'm a graduate student at the UNC Charlotte, majoring in health informatics. I'd like to welcome you all to the 6th Annual Charlotte Women in Data Science Virtual Conference, hosted and sponsored by UNC Charlotte School of Data Science and Lowe's Inc. The Women in Data Science Charlotte Conference initiative aims to inspire and educate data scientists across the region, regardless of gender, and also support women in the field. With the current state of the world mainly interacting online, we're very grateful for your decision to attend our two-day virtual event and show your support for our various speakers. I'd like to extend a special thanks to all our attendees for showing up and showing your support. I'm happy to introduce, and I also take the opportunity to welcome our speakers for the hour, Nadia Boxley, who is Senior Events Marketing Manager at Microsoft, and Katie Tonkin, who is Digital Customer Experience Lead at Microsoft. They will be talking about allyship in action, personal favorite one. Just to remind, you can type in your questions in the chat box, or if you want, you can ask them by unmuting yourself, and we can address the questions at the end of the session. So again, I welcome you all here today and would hand it over to our speakers now.
Hi, everybody. We're so excited to be here. I'm Katie, and my partner in crime here is Nadia Boxley, and we're so excited to talk to you about allyship, and really the concept of allyship being a verb, not a noun, a verb.
Well, I'll jump in to introduce myself. Again, as Katie mentioned, I'm Nadia Boxley, and I am here working at Microsoft, and I lead industry marketing and lead industry events and corporate events in Microsoft US. And so today, both Katie and I are here because while that is our day job, that's my day job, our passion job, we are able to do at Microsoft as well. And that's really focusing on allyship and diversity and inclusion. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Thanks, Nadia. And I'm Katie Tonkin. As Himadri mentioned, I am the digital experience lead for Microsoft US. I oversee the strategy and the execution for our digital marketing. For me, allyship was not a natural skill or even really a word I knew how to define growing up. And, I don't know how many of you this would resonate with, but, the values that I was raised with was be nice, stay out of trouble. And nowhere in there was stand up, see something, say something. So currently I'm on my own allyship journey for three communities right now: the Black and African American community, the LGBTQIA+ community, and then the indigenous peoples. And really I'm here to say, if I can do this, and if I can bring openness and an open mind to this and turn my perspective around, anybody can. Before we jump into the allyship, I just wanted to say happy International Women's Day on Tuesday. I know there's a lot of celebrations and things happening over the next week in celebration of Women's Day and Women's History Month. But I just wanted to pause and say, happy International Women's Day, and reminder, leaning in on allyship is a verb here, that truly International Women's Day is not just for women, it's for all to celebrate the history of women and what they've brought to the world. And now we'll jump into our content.
Mm-hmm. So when Katie and I were asked to come and speak to you all, we were thinking about, what exactly we wanted to talk about. And of course, starting it off, we're so passionate about it, but why allyship? Why is it important? And to bring it to the basic level, we want to, and we hope you all want to create environments around you where people feel heard and seen and valued and understood. And so I think part of allyship, and why we're talking about it as a verb, is really flexing this muscle and working on creating these environments actively where you develop empathy towards different communities. I too am on my own journey in allyship, as we all will be, and we'll talk a little bit more about how I feel pretty strong about being a woman and being a Black woman and being a mother and all the things that I identify with, but there are areas where I'm not as strong, and I'm learning a ton about the LGBTQIA plus community and a lot of other communities. A lot of my Asian American community friends and family members too have been reaching out a lot about what's been going on and concerns in their communities recently. So I feel like the allyship journey is not straight. It's always like learning and what's going on and what's important and prioritizing. But I think we all have it in our capacity to be great allies. So it's really flexing that muscle, flexing being empathetic towards whether it's underrepresented or marginalized or just different communities that might need you to be an advocate and an accomplice and an ally at different points in time. So we're going to dig into that today, and we're super excited about it.
Bringing why allyship down to some tangible things that have been happening in this country. We want to share this slide, and we're going to give you a minute to digest it. In the chat, feel free, please feel free to share. This is we like to do. Allyship is also about creating community, and so the chat is open. We would love for you to share some thoughts about this, if you're comfortable. We know that that can be a vulnerable experience, but if you're comfortable, let's create some conversation around this. And what does this mean to you? What does this? How does this sit with you? And if anybody would like to come off mute that's participating, now, if the moderators wouldn't mind letting folks come off mute, if there's anybody that would like to share any reactions to this. That's okay. It's okay. No participation needed. These are things that these are the headlines from within the last year or so. Some of them, yes, definitely leaning heavier on what COVID has done to communities, but also, really country coming to some boiling points in the US here around racial inequalities, around xenophobia, nationalism as opposed to globalism, and some of the impacts that that's had on communities. These were headlines that have inspired a lot of us at Microsoft to take a pause and ask ourselves what can we do to change the world? What can we do? What can we do to impact this? I'm going to play a video, and we'd love for you to just sit back and think as you're watching this, what are the things that come to mind for you? And again, using the chat, or if you feel after the video like coming off mute, that'd be wonderful too, just with some reactions.
You know that little voice in your head? The one that tells you to ignore a tasteless joke.
Sorry about that. That would be my internet.
The one that tells you to keep quiet when a client makes a racist comment.
The little voice that tells you you're not smart enough because English isn't your first language.
Or that it's okay to judge someone for leaving early because they have family commitments.
The one that tells you not to say anything when others are being reduced to stereotypes.
Or that it's not a big deal when everyone's opinion isn't considered.
You may think you're the only one that hears that voice, but that voice also speaks to other people. It says,
You're different.
You're an outsider.
You lack commitment.
Your opinion doesn't matter.
Instead of listening to that little voice, you need to find yours and make it heard. It's time for all of us to speak up. Because when we change the dialogue, we can change our world.
All right. Thank you for watching that. Anybody feel bold, want to share a reaction?
I think more people want to see this, definitely.
Yeah. Nadia, have you experienced some of those same things in the professional in your professional career?
Oh, absolutely. And not just professional career, right? Just like everyday life. Yeah, everyday life. And I think all of us can relate to something here at every, realm of their lives. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know I certainly have too. So any other reactions, or feel free in the chat to share with your colleagues.
So I have, I've experienced that voice as well. And recently I've been saying to myself, why didn't I speak up? At the moment, I knew the comment felt not right and that it was inappropriate, but why didn't I address it in the moment? And so, so that's where I'm at right now. Realizing that that feeling that I have is a feeling that it's not right.
Yeah.
And that it's okay to address it in the moment.
It is. And Jessica, thank you for coming off and being vulnerable, because a lot of us, I think everybody has had those moments where they, when the mantra of see something, say something, when you didn't act the way that you're in reflection, that your values or your morals would have liked you to take action or say something. It is bold and it is hard to do that. But I'm going to applaud you, because being aware, and we're going to talk about the allyship framework and some specific things, but awareness is that first stage in actioning and getting to the actioning allyship. And we'll talk, and hopefully I've got some content, and Nadia and I have some things around how to think about that something, say something, and hopefully that will help you.
Well, and also to feel empowered, right? So the idea is we're learning, we're growing. We're also very socialized. I have 3 daughters, and I was just talking to my husband about this yesterday, that especially as women, we're often socialized to always be polite no matter what. And raising 3 daughters now, I feel like, well, why if they feel uncomfortable, or you have that gut instinct, Jessica, I think that's not right or wrong. We're just socialized to be polite. So it's there's always a polite way to react and to speak up. But sometimes it may not be as polite. But that's what we're working on. We're all working on how can we feel empowered to say the right thing. Or say something, right?
Say something, yeah. And the right thing, just to the level of set, I don't think any of us know how to do any of this perfectly, and there is no right or wrong. It's not black and white. And so, trying is the first step. That's that first step. All right, we'll go on to the next slide here. All right, I'm making sure. Can everyone still see my slide deck?
You need to share them again because we took them down a while ago.
Nadia, can you do a gut check? Can you see my slide deck?
I can't see it.
You need to share your slides again because we took them down a few minutes ago.
Oh, I'll reshare.
You just need to share your screen.
Yeah, it is sharing, but for some reason it's saying not, but that's okay. Technical things are technical things. Let me try this. Am I sharing again?
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Sharing.
Perfect. Okay. So, after that video and kind of thinking and processing, and then when we think about, okay, allyship and how does that fit together? Allyship is the concept of allyship, it's the universal tool that everyone on the planet can use to address the inequalities that divide us, or the perceived inequalities, or the perceived the perceptions that we are not equal or we're not equally valued. Technical definitions here, because I'm a definitions person and I'm sure some of the other folks on the call are too. So what is an ally? Being an ally is an intentional decision to understand and empathize and then act in support of others. And being an ally is a lifelong journey, and it's a practice. It's something that it's a muscle that you have to build. And the role of an ally, and this is a hard one, and this is where when I was beginning my allyship journey, this is when I didn't understand. It's the role of an ally. When you assume that role of an ally, it needs to be something that is earned and authentic. And when I say earned, I mean that you understand you understand what you're standing up for, and that you're empathetic to the surroundings of the situation in which you're acting your allyship. So allyship, it's that informed and consistent and empathetic practice. So it is the practice of being an allyship. And it requires reflection and thinking and relearning of past behaviors. It is not just acting, it is also changing how you interpret signals from around you too. For frameworks, now we're going to jump into some frameworks. There are 4 phases of the allyship journey. The first phase is apathy. It's when you don't know. You have no understanding of an issue facing a community, and that's okay to be apathetic. There's no right or wrong place to be, but what it is being aware of where you are. That's the action, and where in terms of acting, and just knowing where you're at on this. So then after you become, and many people will say this is when awareness happens, it's that woke, you got woke and you're aware of what's happening to a community. But you're not yet active on behalf of yourself or others in that community. Then after awareness, and awareness really builds the empathy that allows you to act in an authentic and an earned way, back to the definition of being an ally. So when you start actioning and becoming an active ally for a community, that means that at that point you are well informed and you are sharing and seeking diversity when actively prompted. You know what's going on and you're actively seeking out to create the spaces that are that allow for all voices to be equal, all people to be treated equally within your environment. And between activating and lifelong advocate, there's the lifelong advocate phase of allyship is when that is something that you commit to for the rest of your, for a period of time, for a community where you're going to be routinely and proactively championing for inclusion on behalf of a community. There are 3, so now we had the 4 phases of allyship. We're going to blow out the activating or the active phase a little bit more. There's 3 phases of allyship. They are the 3 stages of actioning allyship. And these actually aren't, you start with 1 and go to 2 and go to 3. They're very fluid, but it's good to be conscious of where you're at and what the stage is and what the situation is that you're acting and actioning your allyship. The first is being an ally to one. And that's really focusing on an individual. That's acting when your friend needs help, when somebody at work is put down or not respected or included the way that you believe that they should be. And that is part of lifelong allyship and actioning allyship too. It's always being on the eye for those types of opportunities to step up and be that ally. And in stage 2, this is when you're acting on behalf of some. And typically, this is when folks are inspired to act either by things with injustices, friends and community members, things that have changed in their life circumstances. When you become this ally to some, and you're really focused on a single group, and you know it's you're looking to be that you know that bridge for people in their lives to you know. And you're also acting really when you're inspired to do so here. The third phase is when you're an ally to all, and that's really that's really the key difference here is when you're seeking to really improve the system. So you're championing on behalf of an entire community to change the systemic ways that a community might be oppressed, might be marginalized, might be excluded, and you're consistently actioning that behavior by creating sustainable practices for yourself and for folks, for other allies like you. And for Jessica, who came off mute and shared some thoughts, you know, the actioning allyship actually takes empathy for all, and that includes yourself, the person affected, as well as the source of the behavior. And you know, folks have said, why would I be empathetic to the source of a behavior? And there's a lot of good reasons. There's a lot of good reasons for that, because intent and action don't always line up. So when we think about, we're going to start with the source of the behavior. Are you treating the source as a bad person? Are you separating intent from impact? Those are some questions to ask yourself before you stand in or stand up and stand in to see something, say something. Just making sure and doing that gut check of, I'm not going to treat this person as a bad person. I'm not going to assume that this is who they are. However, I am going to call out what I saw. The next empathy, part of the empathy triangle, is really around helping the effective person, right? And then these are questions where I have failed here. Okay, so I'm just going to own that. Could your intervention actually be received as unhelpful, which could be embarrassing in the moment, or even it could come across as patronizing, meaning that that person might perceive it as they're not able to stand up for themselves. So it's a fine line there. And then so if you're not sure about any of those things, maybe you ask yourself, should I seek permission or guidance? Even if and that's the pause that you take. Perhaps you don't act in the moment, but you talk to the person that was affected and get their perspective, and then circle back to the source of the behavior to have a more to have a conversation and a more, what I'm going to say, a leveled conversation about something you witnessed, and then you just wanted to share that's your perspective. And then obviously the empathy for yourself. And it's really like, and asking yourself, am I informed to act? What are my motivations stepping into this situation? And am I maximizing my effectiveness by thinking of either longer term or systemic solutions to how I'm actioning my allyship? I'm going to pause there. Any questions? And if anybody wants to come off mute, that would be just that's totally fine too. No? Great. Nadia, I'm going to turn it to you.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down. That's a lot. So you might be wondering, like, why are Katie and I like here today, and what makes us the specialists? This is not what we do for a living. We don't have formal education per se in allyship or allyship training, but I think that's what makes us perfect, to be honest. I mean, anyone can be an ally at any time, at any place. And we kind of want to show you what we're doing, not only at Microsoft, but in our personal lives. And so, yeah, if you can go to the next slide, I have a case study for you. And again, feel free to jump in, because it's interesting. So with the support of our leadership and a great company that has supported us on tons of other initiatives, we currently have a program that we've been running about a year now, specifically about allyship. So, you know, with the, I don't know, awakening over the last year specifically on things that have been going on, both politically, socially, and, you know, in the United States. Tons of people have been like, you know, I'm having heavy conversations at home. I'm disowning friends and family. I want to, what can I do? How can I support different communities? And so there was a real need and want and hunger, which is the, you know, the perfect place to start. So I partnered with Katie and we came up with a program which we call Allyship in Action. And it's a learning path. That's what we just decided it is, right? So what we recognized is, you know, with the hundreds of folks in our organization, or thousands, obviously, everybody's at a different stage of their journey in allyship, right? Some people are just like, wow, this happens when, you know, the police pull people over. I had no idea, to like, hey, this has gone on way too long, and we need to do something. I'm ready to enact some public policy and whatnot. So with that in mind, we broke down, we decided specifically we were focusing on the Black community at this time. So obviously you can be an ally to many communities, but to make this kind of content that folks could consume in a way, we decided we're going to focus on the Black community. There's urgent issues, it's important. And we broke down these topics, and we talk about these heavy topics during work hours with the support of our leadership. So we are currently at, we just finished on Monday discussing race with children. So every month we set aside actually a whole day called Mindful Mondays. And we have these sessions, if you will, where folks come, you can prepare or not. You can read some of the resources, books, articles, TED Talks, see movies that we recommend. We are working in conjunction with our HR department on some training we have as well. But it's basically, we create this open space for dialogue on these issues. And it's ally-led. So for an example, for the Black community, I identify as a Black person. So I do not lead these conversations, but myself and other peers at Microsoft come in and we help with the content. We help our allies. Like, these are topics that are, you know, of interest to us. Here's some examples. And we are in these conversations, but we really felt that the allies leading made the most sense. So it didn't come across as like, this is my community, this is what you should be doing. We're supporting these, you know, these are some experiences we have. And on top of it, it's kind of a heavy burden to carry to then become the teachers of this is what's going on in our communities and our families and at home. So it's been a great program. The allies come in and they may not know anything about, you know, systemic racism or public safety and police reform. They come in learning, coming up with the content, and then we have these really in-depth conversations. We don't record them, so it's a vulnerable space. And as you can see, we just dive right in. I mean, I was most nervous. I mean, I'm always nervous every week. I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about privilege. I don't want, you know, someone to get fired up or whatnot. And for the most part, they've been great, engaging, vulnerable conversations. Do you agree, Katie?
Oh, like, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. You know, most of the time folks are coming to these sessions with some level of understanding, but it's not, there's some breadth to the understanding, but there's not the depth. And the goal of these are to add in the depth that builds the empathy, that allows folks to understand what a community is truly going through and experiencing, and then also give actionable ways for all of these types of topics. And as well, we don't just focus on these topics, it's broader ways of actioning allyship, but really breaking things down and saying privilege, right? That was a tough one. Nadia and I were quite nervous. and I had the honor of facilitating that one. And it was everyone knows what the word privilege means, yet they had not yet identified in their lives the places and all the places where they have privilege, and then also how they can extend that privilege on behalf of others to help others. And so that's these are, they're very, they're very important conversations, and I've been, really proud of the organization for allowing us to go here, as well as, the community in Microsoft US who have shown up to these, and which is, it's a significant number of folks who are going through this learning path with us, and it's changed perspectives. It's changed the way that the way that allies feel, and we're doing some work to figure out, have we moved the needle with how the community, how the Black and African American community within Microsoft US feels in response to this, and our fingers are crossed that they have felt some movement.
And I just want to add, I know we're coming on time already and we have a few more slides, but I want to add that I guess our point of being here is we're showing it what it looks like in a work environment, but we're also going to talk about what it looks like at home to us or with our friends and with our family. And so again, other ways we're practicing allyship. So for an example, I lead events. So I'm thinking about accessibility. I'm thinking about diversity of speakers. I'm thinking about representation on every level. We put a demo station with our devices. Can everyone reach them? Can everyone read them? We're having presentation decks. Are they readable? Do people understand them? Does it make sense? And then modeling behaviors. I mean, I think our leadership is showing us, you guys can do this, you do it at work. And we translate it the same way, just like you guys would in your social environment, in your classrooms, and at home. I model, I was saying I have 3 daughters. I have to model, there's things I model and I see them and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't do that. It's bad modeling. And then they're watching us. I mentioned we just had the conversation about discussing race with children, which was very interesting. I'm very open about talking about race with my children. And some people have never, their kids are teenagers and like, we've never ever talked about race. And so we really talked about why it doesn't have to be always negative and heavy. Sometimes it's like, oh, isn't it great that this person's different, or this person has 2 dads, or this person's, hair is straight and yours is curly and things like that. But sometimes it is, as like, hey, if a police comes around, make sure your hands are showing and don't go to the park and have your hoodie on. And, so it varies. But what I think is the best part of our allyship work is it opens people's eyes to being empathetic towards experiences that are not like theirs. So that's the idea. And we bring it at work, we bring it at home, and everyone can do it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the ways at home, that some of the things that I'm working on with my family is really this principle of making sure that all voices are heard, but not necessarily because I come from a Caucasian family of Nordic descent. We don't have a lot of racial diversity in our family, and my interpretation on making sure all voices are heard is really challenging my parents, my siblings, my husband, his family, to seek out other ways to listen to other voices, even if they're not having the active conversation, but it's listening to those voices and incorporating understanding into their everyday lives, so that they too can grow that empathy muscle that helps authentically action allyship. There's a business case for allyship too. So when we think about, there's the right thing to do as a human being, but allyship, in fact, is a smart business investment. So in the US, companies spend about $8 billion a year on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Yet, still at work, and based on a recent survey done by, I think it was Harvard Business Review, I think it was HBR, 40% of people feel isolated at work still. They don't feel like they belong at work. And belonging actually drives a 56% increase in job performance, and it reduces turnover by 50%. Turnover is one of the most expensive costs that a lost opportunity costs that companies have when they lose their talents, their intellectual property, and have to ramp down and ramp up new talent. Belonging also reduces sick days that folks take by 75%. And employees who feel like they belong to a company are 170% more likely to recommend a company to their friends, family, both for products and services as well as for employment. So allyship creates belonging. which increases productivity, reduces turnover, reduces sick day utilization, and helps employees become bigger advocates of the company that they might work for.
Oh, perfect.
You want to take this one, Nadia?
Yeah, I'll take it. I was actually writing back to Josh in the chat, but how about I continue the presentation. Plus, this is actually our last slide. We have so much we would love to talk about, of course, but we always want to bring it back to being a verb, an action. It doesn't matter where you are in your allyship journey. There's something you can say, do, advocate. Maybe protesting is not for you, and that's completely fine. There's so many things you can do: donating, volunteering, speaking up, voting, just continuous learning about different communities, and then flexing that muscle. I think we're doing a lot of the awareness, with our program, our Allyship in Action, we're doing a lot of the awareness, but we really want to make sure we don't get lost with the actual verb of it all. So again, back to the beginning when I was saying, making people feel like they belong and wanting your environment where people can bring their authentic selves, whether it's to work or class or home or your friend circle. I mean, that's kind of the North Star. And there's so many different ways you can do it, and you can start doing it today, and you're empowered. And you don't have to be a specialist. You don't have to be super woke. You just have to understand and have empathy for others. So Katie and I just wanted to talk about that today, and just make sure that everyone feels empowered to really bring their allyship to action and create those environments. So thank you so much for your time. I think we're a little over. I think we might have a couple minutes for questions.
Yeah, I think we've got a few minutes for questions. Anybody want to come off mute? I'll stop sharing. So anybody want to come off mute?
And there was a couple of questions in the chat that I was going to get to.
I will open
you can also type in your question in the chat box if you're not comfortable using the mic.
Yes, for sure. Okay, Shane. Okay, Joshua. Joshua or Josh, not sure. But the process. So this is what it is. I feel like, I can't speak for every company, but we were easily very supported. So it literally was the ask. It was, hey, a lot of people, I have people literally coming to me like, what does it feel? Can I, are you offended if I ask you to touch your hair? Or things that just happen, right? Like, do you prefer Black or African-American? But questions that people want to know, right? I don't think it's always up to the community to take on the burden of educating everyone, but I take that curiosity of other people, and I take it on as a learning moment. So I just feel like let's embrace that. So we went to leadership and we just say, hey, we have this idea. We're talking about heavy topics. We had to get sign on from HR, and there were a lot of processes, but other than that, super supported. Katie and I built the framework, and we have leaders on our sessions, and they're learning, and they're part of it. And we've been recognized with awards already so far. And so I think they support us.
Yeah.
We're going to change our focus of community. So next year, we're going to focus on the LGBTQIA community and focus on things of like pronouns and, the trans community issues and things like that. So we're going to keep it going, but it was surprisingly easier than you would think.
Yeah.
And Josh.
I think Josh was, go ahead.
No, just I was going to say that again, and I think you answered part of this question in terms of specifically, you made a business case in terms of lowering the turnover. But for a lot of organizations, again, the focus is on the bottom line. And these things are seen as distractions when they should be central to the organization's success. So that's what I mean is moving that conversation to say, no, this is part of the business plan and the business success for the organization. And that's part of what I'm impressed with. There's plenty of lip service out there to it.
There is, yeah. We're lucky. Microsoft realized when Satya Nadella, for those that don't know, Satya Nadella is our CEO, and he took the reins of the company back in 2015. And he has immense empathy for his family and some of the things that his family and his son and his wife have gone through. He was instrumental in changing the conversation within Microsoft, and it doesn't hurt to have somebody at the top say, this is what we're going to work on. And our new mission is empowering everyone on the planet to achieve more. And we cannot do that without acting as allies. So it was an easy sell, for us. I have worked in companies before that did not want to do this. And in fact, I've done similar kinds of programs, certainly not as what I'd call rich and thought out as what we're doing here now at Microsoft, but it was really about that business case of, if you want to focus, and I had the luxury of running an ad agency, and yes, bottom line was everything. But what I did is I took our P&L and I applied costs around I removed turnover costs down by the amount that things would, that would shift down HR costs and recruitment costs, as well as sick day utilization, and then increased job performance or output, right, from that sense of belonging. That was a real quick sell for, yes, you have the permission to start having a conversation about this. But what you've got to also make sure to do is make sure that the leadership is really bought in on the idea of it themselves. And I've been part of organizations that have initiatives like these that crop up, but yet it's not it has to be both top down and bottoms up for it to really take a hold and be successful.
I think we have 1 more minute and we have 1 more question. And someone was asking, and hopefully we can approach this right. Approaches for supervisors who would like to make DEI
yes,
evaluations. Well, a quick blurb, we do at Microsoft, it's part of our core priorities, diversity and inclusion. So it's just a part of how we get evaluated. I don't know what more to say.
Yeah, no, I would say you got to get it in that. So there has to be, you've got to have performance goals around that, and really what a core priority around lifting and supporting diversity inclusion initiatives is the generic thing that we are all accountable for laddering to. What that looks like for each individual is different, and it's a very customized plan for every person. And really the manager's job is to cultivate the conversation around the creation of that, and then checking in and the accountability to be an ally or to participate in DEI. That is something that is the employee owns, right? And it's a challenging conversation. I've had these with employees before who don't believe that should be something that they do. So it's also, there's a flip to that when we talk about managing up to leadership. There's also selling the idea to employees. So, that can be a challenging conversation, but this is the company's priority. This is the direction, and these are the things that we stand for. Either you fit, or you don't. And if you don't want to support and be allies to others and be that empathetic ear and support and to remove inequities and that divide us, then maybe that's not the right company. That's a harsh statement to end an allyship session.
More positive. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for listening to us and kind of our case study. Feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn,
yes.
And because we're always happy to talk about all of these items.
We'll share anything with you. We'd love to talk with you about any of the programs that we've done. Nothing's proprietary. There's no precious anything. We're just some folks trying to do some good in the world. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie and Nadia. I think it's really great work that you do. And I really think that it's the need of the hour to have more sessions like these where we're talking beyond work and career paths. So great. Thank you all for being here. And if we don't have any more questions, we can choose to end the session. I hope you all have a great rest of the day.